I love this country more than any other place in the world, and I've worked in probably over a dozen countries. And the story that I talked to John about was I landed in this country when I was around 3 or 4 from one of the most, probably one of the poorest countries in the world, in the Philippines. And I talk about that event of immigration coming here as I was a non-contributing zero, meaning I had no role to play in a very important event that would change and shape my life. And in 2016, I had the opportunity to sort of like have a fairy tale, which was I got to return back to the Philippines and become the first country manager for Facebook and Instagram in the Philippines. And in no other world would that have happened if I didn't get to come to this amazing country to give me the opportunity to go back and write that fairy tale. And to give you a sense for how important Facebook and Instagram is in the Philippines, in North America and Canada, the penetration of Facebook is around 74 to 76% of the internet population. That means 3 out of every 4 people in Canada are on Facebook on a given month. In the Philippines, it's 99%. So if you think technology and social media is embedded into the fabric of our society, imagine running a tech company in a country of 100 million people where Facebook was synonymous with the internet. So it's a pretty incredible journey to get there. There's obviously a lot of intermediate steps through that, but never in my wildest dreams would I sort of start my life with relatively nothing in that country and then get to run the most important tech company in that region.
And while I do want to talk about that tech journey, you're obviously sitting in this unique position at WestJet, which kind of gets back to the idea of if you're a traditional company, who your competitors, who are you competing with? And I know for you, well, sure, some people might say, well, it's Air Canada or it's a regional airline or, maybe it's a US carrier, that for you, it's as much about what's happening on the phone and the ecosystem there that you're thinking about when you're thinking about the competitive environment.
Yeah, I think this applies to all of us in the room that work in traditional companies. So I'm going to go against the grain. The executive team at WestJet will definitively say our competition is Air Canada, Porter, United, you name it, whoever operates in the routes that we fly in. But if you think about why I disagree with that, in the past, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, you would have an experience at a grocery store that's different than the experience you'd have at a bank, that's different than the experience you'd have in a retail location or your doctor, and that journey can take 5 or 10 days. Today, the competitive set that defines consumer experiences is the ones on your smartphone. So when you open a WestJet or an airline app, you don't say, oh, because it's not Instagram or Netflix, it's allowed to become a worse experience. Today, consumers expect a great experience because these tech companies have defined what the experience should be like. So when I tell my team when we build products and services, of course we have to build what the airline's building, but we have to think about the competitive set as not being that. Because the consumer experience isn't being defined by our industry, it's being defined by other companies that are far ahead of us in that game. Yeah, so even though I'm really at the top of the food chain from a technology perspective in the company, 90% of my time isn't even spent on technology. So in Kathy's opening remarks around sort of being the misfit, the renegades in the organization, the stuff that my team is trying to create is a different way of moving, a different way of thinking. In fact, we were paid the highest compliment. I just came back from Silicon Valley yesterday, meeting with a major Silicon Valley company, and we were talking about things that we can do, and the compliment that we were paid was, it's interesting, your team doesn't sound like you work at an airline. And that's sort of the outcome, right? There's parts of our business that have to adhere to the policies of, obviously, safety, risk aversion, maintaining everything has to be business case, but that works in the traditional part of the business. In our world, none of that stuff really works. It's about agility, it's about velocity, it's about experimentation, it's about continually trying new things, because we're not competing with the other businesses in our area. If we are, all we're doing is making 1% improvements here. It's the threat that there's going to be a startup that models something better than we're doing today. Right? So the one thing we've learned is to set a bar that isn't what we're thinking about in the next year or two. It's what could this look like in 3 or 4 or 5 years? And the only way to do that is have an experimentation mindset. So the challenges are more on the cultural challenges as opposed to, can we solve this with technology? I often joke that with enough money and horsepower you can solve technology, but the people on the culture side is the hardest.